All right. Thank you for being awake on Thursday morning. I'm sure Wednesday night there's always something to do, so you probably had a good time last night, and I'm glad you were able to wake up and come to the 8:30 session.
Me too.
Me three, because I was pretty tired last night. So this session is called You Did What? Worst Practices in CM12 and How to Fix Them. My name is Sherry Kissinger. I'm a Configuration Manager MVP, and this is Brian Mason.
I'm also MVP. We both work for Wells Fargo. And even though we work for Wells Fargo, our opinions aren't necessarily theirs, and we don't represent them or Microsoft's. These are basically our opinions. So.
Yeah. And just a little idea of what we're planning on doing here is we're going to do a little bit of a role play type of thing. There's going to be Sherry's World Company and Brian's World Company. And just that, like our two companies, after about a year each of having CM12 in our environments, one of us bought the other one out or something like that, and now we have to merge our hierarchies. So a lot of what we'll be doing is we'll be like a role play type of thing of now we're having meetings and we're trying to figure out how to merge our two hierarchies and just looking at each other's settings and going, wow, you did something really weird there, Brian, or he's like, Sherry, you're crazy. So that's what we're going to do. And it's basically, we want to show that CM12, in my opinion, is pretty robust. You can screw it up pretty well, and it's still going to work just fine, and there's nothing really wrong with it. It just might be not the optimal way to have designed it or set it up or turned on settings.
So we're going to have fun with it, but you can do it, and it'll work. We're going to try to help you do it better. That's all.
Mm-hmm. So MCS approved my design. Sherry's World Company and Brian's World Conglomerate. When I designed my new hierarchy, I gave myself a CAS, just like everybody else. I gave myself a PR1. And all my clients, I have about 40,000 clients. They all belong to PR1, and I have my CAS. How about you, Brian? What do you got?
My design is a nice CM12 design. I went down to one primary. It's in Minneapolis, so I used a site code of MSP. That's our airport code. I have one CAS, 15,000 clients, so we did the CM12 model where we scaled down, got rid of all of our other primaries. We followed a model that's we're being told to.
Okay, so we should be able to just swing one of the primaries underneath the other one, right? Isn't that?
Yes, if we want to merge these two, we know right now that there is no such thing as swinging a CAS under a CAS, or even a primary under somebody else's CAS.
Yeah, so I think what we have to do, right, we have to either migrate settings from one to the other and just uninstall and reinstall the clients, basically.
Somebody's going to have to lose their infrastructure, basically.
Yeah.
All your clients from PR1 are going to have to be redirected to MSP or vice versa, or we just build a new hierarchy together. That's
great, Brian, and I'm just having a little bit of buyer's remorse here. For CAS in primary one, or PRI, whatever I called it, I've always been having to go into the console or watch those emails about my replication getting degraded, or now it's fine, or I've always been a little nervous about replication. Are you telling me that I probably didn't have to have a CAS for the last whole year?
Yeah, I'm pretty happy about that myself, that I got to pay for 2 OSs, 2 antiviruses, 2 licenses for everything, double the monitoring, double the point of failure.
Oh, man. So what were we thinking?
We were trying to be future-proofed.
Oh, I guess that didn't really work out, because that just didn't work out. And the other thing, too, is although it doesn't exist yet, I'm wondering if perhaps for the next version of Config Manager, maybe it would have been possible to merge MSP and PR1 under one of these CASs, but I'm kind of nervous that would even work because we both happen to name our CAS site code CAS. Wouldn't that be very confusing?
Obviously, that wouldn't work. So if they ever do give us some kind of fix, we've also screwed ourselves by giving ourselves the exact same site code. And I'm even lucky that you didn't pick PRI, because the odds are that if you had also picked MSP and you could have swung under my CAS, we couldn't have 2 MSPs.
That's true. So it just didn't matter.
So a good tip, don't pick CAS for a site code.
Yep, don't pick CAS for a site code. And actually the better tip is don't have a CAS at all. I was only 40,000 clients. You were 15,000 clients.
15, yeah.
I don't think we needed a CAS at all. But let's see what some of the other reasons are and how to fix these. I think we've kind of gone through the little role play on this. But the other thing, too, is when we're merging, we can export and import, right, from a site to
so
a
that would
site.
be a solution, is if we build a new site together, we could just export what we like, the best of our two worlds that we are going to agree that we're going to take forward into our new company, export out of ours and import into the new one. Export and import works really good in CM12. It actually works great for the lab, so if you start there and you get used to it, you're not going to be freaked out if you ever have to buy another company and import their data.
We were also going to talk a little bit about discovery. If you do happen to have multiple site codes and you have to have a CAS site, you don't have to run discovery on every single primary and every single site that you have in your environment. Because of global data, there's a lot of discoveries that you can do it at just one site, and as global data, it'll replicate. So be careful about enabling discovery if you happen to really, really, truly need multiple sites. Just design your discovery agents in appropriate manners. Brian, historically, I'm still thinking CM07, and I've always had to have a primary site for my servers and a primary site for my workstations.
Yeah, and I'm hearing a lot of that at the conference, that politics isn't going to let us keep one site. Nobody wants to get along and share the same hierarchy. And the best defense you can get back to them is say, look, you don't put your servers in one domain and your workstations in another domain. You guys share the same domain, don't you? You don't need two hierarchies. You should be able to have one hierarchy, one primary, and use RBA to split those roles up. And
if you haven't done it yet, there's a self-paced lab you can take on implementing role-based administration. So if that still is a confusing concept to you, because it has been many years when under CM07 or SMS 2003, that's just the way it's been done. But with role-based administration, it is a lot easier to separate the roles and separate the scopes of the people who need to be in your console. So I do encourage you to take this lab so that you understand how it does work. So another reason that people indicate that they're really sure that they are the exception. Even though they have only 40,000 clients, they're the exception, and they're adamant that they're going to need a primary site in Europe and a primary site in Asia to future-proof themselves, or because they know that they have slow links and they need that sender, and they want to make sure that everything is designed well for network traffic. So that's true, Brian. Isn't that still true in CM12?
It will work. Again, we're not going to yell at you for saying this is you did what on this one, but we do recommend that if you can get by with a secondary in your other country and not build up a primary just for that reason, do that. And if you're worried about your admins in that other country needing a fast console, then you just use Citrix or RDS or something to get them back to that CAS or that one single primary. And that last slide, that did say client count is what Sherry and I really are big on, saying, yes, we'll finally agree that you probably need a CAS.
Yeah. Okay, Brian, I'm finally convinced. You've convinced me that together, when we merge our two hierarchies, we don't need a CAS. But I still think we need to offload SQL.
You don't have to offload SQL initially, and you can do that at any time if you decide you absolutely have to do it. But I always recommend buying more disks instead of more servers. If you buy another server just to offload SQL, you might just have two crappy servers at the end of all that. So get more disks first and see if that gets you out of your bottleneck, because disks are cheap.
Yeah, this is more of a recommendation, but in our new combined hierarchy, we'll have 55,000 clients, and maybe we could get away with just one MP between us, but there's kind of a rule of thumb of how many management points you should have.
So I know that from real world experience, I know I can push my MPs past that 25,000 limit.
Yeah.
But you just basically, you can add these things on at any time. So you don't have to have this perfect design when you're getting out to CM12. You can build onto it. You can always add MPs if they start struggling and get behind.
And we should mention that that's something that's slightly new. If you haven't been to a hierarchy design session earlier or understood the concept of management points, It used to be that if you had more than 25,000 clients in your primary, you had to have your management points behind a network load balancer. So you could have multiple management points, but you'd still have the one MP address behind an NLB address. Under CM12, you can just add them.
Just like DPs.
Yeah, just like DPs, so the client will just pick one. So that's an easy way. You don't have to do too much technology behind that. It's just another MP role on a server. Okay, just as an example for hierarchy simplification, under CM07, and we were pretty tight, I think, under CM07 for how many servers we needed. But we currently have 48 servers that manage the infrastructure of CM07 for Wells Fargo, which supports about 300,000 clients. And our new design for CM12 is 30 servers. So we're dropping it by a third number of servers. The reason we can do this, just to be full disclosure, is we do have an alternate content provider. We happen to use 1E Nomad, so we don't have that many DPs. There's really, how many DPs in the new model? I think it's like
6.
6? Yeah.
And that's just for safety.
Yeah, that's because we probably could get away with 3. But 6 is disaster recovery reasons, really.
But even CM12 is going to help us reduce our count. And I'm hoping server 2012 will even do more for us.
Oh, yeah, that's true. Okay, another thing that has historically been an issue that I see in the forums a lot is people mention, okay, I'm being required to virtualize. I have to virtualize everything, or I inherited this environment and it's virtualized. So sometimes those questions come up about, can you do that? Well, of course you can.
You know, you can, and you know, a couple of years ago, whenever I heard anybody do that, I'd like cry. It's like, yeah, that's not going to really work. VMs, unless you do them right, it's pretty hard to get to scale up into some serious numbers. VMs are getting better. People are understanding how to run them better. So I don't shriek when anybody does it anymore. And I can tell you, Microsoft even has completely virtualized their entire environment. I think their CAS is still physical, and that's about it.
Okay.
But they get by with it by spinning off roles, not giving any one VM too much work to do. And one of the things I like to say, at least when you're starting to scale up and you're feeling pain points, don't offload SQL first. I would offload roles that are going to hit the primary first. So take IIS off your primary and start offloading all those roles. Or any time a client's going to come up and ask the primary for information, have them go talk to that MP or DP or something somewhere else instead of the primary.
So basically any of these roles where the clients need to communicate to the server, put your management point on a completely different server, your distribution points, your software update points, reporting point I don't think I put on there. What else? There's a couple other things where clients or workstations.
And you can take it a step further. There's, they have this nice, great new replication model that goes from primaries to CAS. But that doesn't talk about the old-fashioned transactional replication that you could do from MPs and primaries. That's still available. And you can still make a little manual push-up, just a little small set of data to the MP so that it has enough information to answer all the client's questions without having to bug your primary every single time one of those clients comes in to answer a question.
Okay. So just to reiterate, VMs are fine. Just make sure you size them correctly and pay attention to disk. Historically, whenever people seem to say their virtual environment isn't working well for Config Manager, it's almost always disk is their bottleneck. I've heard a few instances, and we've hit it once now finally, but you know, we're talking 300,000 clients. We've hit it once where CPU was the bound. Our CPU was bound, but then we corrected that, add a couple more, and then it went right back to disk being the reason we got bound. So pay attention to disk first. If you are absolutely 100% positive that disk is not your bottleneck, then you might need to look at more CPUs or something else that's interfering with your VM working as designed or as you hoped. It's probably working just as designed, just poorly designed. All right. Security. This is where we go into a little bit of fun here. Back to our little Sherry's versus Brian world. This is Sherry's world console. And in Sherry's world, I can't see it well. How about that? That's better. In Sherry's world, I made my life super easy. I decided the easiest way to give people rights to the console was to add one group into security administrative users. There's a group called SMS admins, and I nested inside of SMS admins domain users. Just because, I don't want to think about it. When I hire a new person, I just want them to get into the console, and I can just move on. That was right. That works just fine, Brian. What's wrong with this?
Oh my God. Seriously, I'm going to ask you, that might, I wouldn't even do that in a lab, but.
I don't get it. It works perfectly. I hire new people, they can get into the console immediately. It's fine.
You're so trusting, but I bet you that you don't put domain users inside of domain admins in AD, do you?
Let me check, actually. I'm not sure.
Yeah. Yeah, my guess is no. So I would recommend that you bust up right at the beginning. I know that you're going to be the first person in the console, and you're going to set it up for yourself, and you're going to say, I'm going to get to RBA someday. Well, make someday the first thing that you do. Do it right away. Oh, that's my server guy. He can't see anything. Where's me? Take the time to get a few groups in there to begin with, and before you add anybody besides yourself, start creating scopes, which are where you're going to cut it. The quickest way to do this is just put a workstation scope in there and a server scope. Just so that you're understanding what scopes are doing, that's where you're going to start cutting up people who have rights to get to see what they want to, or what they're going to have access to. The roles, they come built in. There's certain roles that are built in. Just don't ever give this full administrator one out. This is domain admins. And I don't even put myself in that. I'll just temporarily put myself in that to do some kind of big event. But I like to even protect myself and say, look, I didn't accidentally send anything to you. I couldn't. I'm not even in that group. There's a whole bunch of these that come out of the box. And as you bring in admins, and they're not even sure about all the facets of CM, if they only know software updates, they're just going to start learning that. You don't have to give them all these other roles. So like here's my server admin. His display looks a little different. He can't see all those roles. I gave him software updates and applications. That's all he can see. And as he learns more and more functions and he wants to do DCM and stuff, I'll add that role later on, but he doesn't need it right now, right today.
The other thing I think you were going to show as a demo is giving people rights to reports. If you want to run through that, I'll explain it a little bit. This is just my and Brian's personal philosophy. In Configuration Manager, there's a huge, rich data set in there. And if you work for a rather large company, sometimes managers ask for information. And if they have to first ask for rights to see that information, they're not going to do it. They're busy. They've got 5 minutes to look for this information. So what we recommend is give domain users read-only rights to all of your reports. What you could do is, if there's some reports that you feel are sensitive in some way or other, you can break it up. But if you're a slightly smaller company and you trust that people are trustworthy in your environment, give everyone rights.
Yeah, this is kind of the flip side of opening things wide open. Is on reporting, if you want to do that, there is no such thing as a report user role, but you can create one pretty easily just by editing that read-only analyst. You can just clone that role, go through this and uncheck every single role except for the reporting ones, and then you can assign that to domain users, and that'll tell SRS to open up those reports to anybody. And if there's certain ones like you still don't want to have site on there, you can take that one out if you want. It gets really granular. Yeah. By default, though, like if you give someone the software update role, they'll be able to see software update reports. So that might be okay. That might be good enough to you. But if you want to open it up, this is one way to do it.
Okay, I think we've gone through most of these. Yeah. Did you talk about taking yourself out of the super user group?
I didn't, but I alluded to it that I don't keep myself in that group. I gave that full admin a group in AD, and I can put myself in there temporarily to do some kind of big high-end function and then take myself out of that group so that even I don't always see all facets of the console at any one time.
Let's go back. So Brian, we're looking at our two environments. I've got 40,000 clients. You have 15,000 clients, and my database is like a third of your size, but you have a third of the clients. Wonder what you're doing that's different.
I don't know. I know SQL pretty well. I don't know what I could have done wrong. You got any ideas?
Well, maybe some of this audience doesn't know, but I'm the Moth Master, and I'm big into hardware inventory. So I know there's some hardware inventory classes that can be pretty chatty. Did you maybe turn on, like all of the asset intelligence classes? Can we just take a look?
Sure. So this is
So yeah, that's
my
hardware
default
inventory. Yeah.
my default client settings here. I have I didn't crank up the interval. I'm still set for weekly.
Your MIF size is only 250. Oh, you've turned on everything.
That's just in case I need it someday.
All right, well, obviously it's been working. There's really no wrong way to do this, but your database is 3 times the size of mine with a third of the clients. I think we might need to have an offline chat about which of these things we really, really need. Like, for example, maybe you don't really need to know that everybody has a keyboard and that it's 101 keys.
But they give me all these check boxes. I just wanted to say yes. It's so easy now without that ugly moth.
All right, well, I'm just going to make a recommendation, and we'll go through this later.
We'll go through this, and I guess maybe I don't need CD-ROM reporting.
But one thing I'll show you what we've done. This happens to be the DCM change control document that we have internally at Sherry's World. But whenever anybody asks us for a DCM request or an inventory request, we put it in this little spreadsheet, and here's the requests tab. And we know who requested it. Here, let me make it fit on the screen better. We know who requested it, what they requested, and most importantly, when we don't need it anymore, so that I will contact them. If they've asked for it in December and they said they don't need it, they'll no longer need it in April, I will contact them in April and say, okay, are you really truly done with this? And they'll either say yes, or they'll say I need another 3 months, and then I go change it to, I uncheck the box for that particular inventory item. So that's how I'm keeping it nice and tidy.
I was trying to remember it, and a year later, I don't know who asked for what anymore.
That's why, use something, whether it's a spreadsheet, whether it's going to be OneNote. I don't care if you use yellow sticky notes and put them on your monitor, but find some way to...
No, not that one.
That's not going to work?
No. Okay, so hardware inventory is...
That's one of them, but that might not be the full story. Let's look at your another possibility is software updates.
Software inventory or software updates?
I'm sorry, software inventory. Yeah, our script is falling apart.
My schedule, I still didn't bump that up. I'm not doing anything crazy there. I do have software inventory turned on because we used to use it before in case I ever need it.
Oh, well, by default in RTM, you don't get any software inventory rules. Are you sure you need?
I copied what I had in CMO7 just because.
And that's perfectly valid to search for start.exe on all client hard disks, but are you sure you need to? Did you do an analysis when you moved from 07 to 12? Did you ask people what they needed?
I was in such a hurry, I just had to get the site up and going fast, and I didn't really have time to
ask. Okay, well, maybe now that we're merging and we have a project manager, which isn't us, but we'll ask the project manager to make sure we have a discussion and figure out which rules we really need. For example, maybe we'll find out that all we really need is a specific application in program files, HR app 1. So let's see, did we cover all this? CCM recently used apps. I can talk about that really quickly. CCM recently used apps, that is still and probably will still be an issue on terminal services or Citrix servers. So one of the best things about CM12 is you can do custom client agent settings. So you could disable CCM recently used apps on your default and then enable it in a custom client agent profile that you perhaps would target to workstations and even your servers, but perhaps a more subset of your servers, the ones that aren't Citrix servers and aren't heavily used terminal servers, so that you don't get the big MIF size.
So don't touch the default client settings that often. Usually if somebody has a request, we'll just make a single custom one for them, target just their collection, get them the information they need, expire it, like you said, at some certain date, and keep it clean.
Yeah. So,
oh, before that one,
yeah,
we were going to look at software. Now you did have the software.
No, I did.
Question.
Yeah, I forgot to mention that. There's another possible reason that his database might be so much larger than mine is software updates. There's a place when you create your software update role, you go in and you choose which things you want to sync.
I'll show you mine.
I think you're 3. Sorry. So if you go into your software update syncing settings, by default, I think there's 3 things checked here, Brian, and I see you've turned on everything. That's perfectly valid. Obviously, your site is working, but maybe you don't need all classifications.
You're being so nice, but you're saying that I'm an idiot.
I didn't want to say that out loud when the boss is in the same meeting as us.
But basically, so there's a philosophy that says you can check all these, and that way if somebody happens to put Exchange 2000 in my environment, I'll know that that they're not patched all the way.
Yeah, again, it's going to work. It obviously does work. You've been up for over a year, and it works just fine. But maybe we should go look and see if there's anybody with Exchange 2000 in your database
before we go and check
at all.
Yeah. And the idea is we're getting a lot of state messages back saying, no, I'm not compliant there. I'm not. That one doesn't affect me. That one doesn't affect me. That one doesn't. Oh, yes, I'm compliant.
Yeah.
So
yeah, that's the other thing, too. With every single rule you add in, just about every single client has to check. So that's a lot of chatter from your client to your management point to get all those policies, evaluate all those policies, evaluate all those config items, and send back a yes or a no. So if you do get, I'm wondering if you do have a state message backlog. That happens quite often. I wonder. We'll have to look at that too. All right, client pull.
Oh. Yeah, I see that you're doing client push, which I can't stand client push. Client push is...
But it's like the standard.
I know,
That's
it's
what
so easy
does.
to set up, and it's kind of like the default that Microsoft is always telling you to do, and I see a lot of people do it. But every single thing about Config Manager is clients are pulling from an MP, and then they pull their data from a DP to install something. They pull their updates off a DP. They scan against us up. They're always doing the pulling work. This is the one time you're going backwards, you're trying to cram something down its throat. And that means, to go backwards means I have to have admin shares turned on. I need a local admin account on that machine. I have to have the firewall open. There's so much pain and hard work and effort against that, and people have issues with it. The smart move, actually, is to have a client health GPO, which we use on our side. Even though there's client health built into CM, how are you going to get the client on a busted client? If you have a client health GPO, we can repair the client before CM actually gets installed, and then CM can take care of itself after the fact. These other methods all work just as well. A sub-based install is basically having a software update point. See, like, you're missing config man. That's like a patch that's missing. Here, come and get it. Automatic client update is kind of cool. That's new to CM12. It comes out of the box disabled, I think, but it's a nice way to set a deadline for everybody to say, all right, I've been trying to do a quiet, slow install of CM, but as of this date, if you're not here on my new Service Pack 1 version, by God, you're going to get it. Okay. All those methods are great, but push, you're not going to use that anymore.
So Brian, I was in kind of a hurry too when we migrated from CM07 to CM12 because, you know, it got released this week. I went home on Saturday, and I installed it, and I migrated everything on Sunday. So, and it's been working fine. And everything looks just like this.
Yeah, how's it look, Sherry?
This is about what it looks like. It's perfectly fine, though. I can find everything eventually.
So, yeah, it's so tempting just to click that checkbox during migration and just bring everything with you. And your new house is going to look like your old if you do that. It'd be nice if you could be more selective and not take all that stuff with you. I know that you spent years building it up, and you think those collections that you worked on were so important. But if you don't start collections over using the CM12 model, you probably won't get used to the new app model. The idea is we're supposed to have fewer collections and let the applications have some of that intelligence and figure stuff on the fly, which means we're not having call eval, wait for a day to update before you can get some kind of app. That can happen a lot faster now. This is your one opportunity to leave some of that baggage behind. So when you migrate, just pick the stuff that you know you really need. And if something hasn't been used in a long time, leave it behind. You can always recreate it.
I know that a lot of people, you know, you've upgraded from SMS perhaps 1 to 2 to 2003 to CM07. So you probably might have a lot of baggage there. But this is a good chance, a good time to go through it and really pull over exactly what you need in your new environment. And honestly, we did do a side-by-side migration from SMS 2003 to CM07. And it was beautiful for about 6 months until they cluttered it all up again. And it looked just like that library again. Yeah. So, folders. Folders are great, aren't they, Brian? I like that I can have folders in my CM12 console. It's beautiful.
Yeah. Folders are cute. And but let's say I open up your console and you're going to say, hey, go find this application. Well, you created these folders.
Well, and I know I created that something. It's called tools something. I know. Wait, no. Was it a utility? Well, maybe I put it under because it was for the HR people.
We have search now, so let me just look for CM. Oh, there's nothing there.
But I know I put it there, Brian, but I just don't remember what folder I stuck it in. There's got to be a way to find it, though.
Security, is it under there? No, thanks. I'm glad you used these folders. So I could do a full, let's say I'm looking for the admin console. I think it's CM12 admin. I could do a full search every time I do this. And we can be on the database, and it's going to finally find it for us, maybe. Oh, there it is. That's one way to find that application. Another is just quit doing it and let search work.
Just don't have folders would be the easiest way?
Just don't have the folders, and then you can search right here at the root to begin with.
Well, and I think I had to start doing that because remember all my domain users were admins of everything. So everything in the root was kind of a pain in the butt. But I suppose, you know, once I secure my objects, then I'm only going to see the stuff that belongs to me. So that probably is another reason.
And so remember that server guy that I told you about? I created a server role. He can only see apps and software updates. And he sees all your useless folders too, even though there's apps in there that he's never even going to be able to see. You can click on it.
I just told my guys to live with it. I didn't care about them.
Thanks.
Nice, huh? Mm-hmm. Such a sweet person.
We're going to get along.
All right, so config manager, obviously it's pretty much the same thing, but it's not exactly the same as it is in CM07. One of the new things, which I'm sure you've heard over and over again, is you can still have packages and advertisements, packages, programs, advertisements, but there's the new app model, which is the new way of getting software onto whatever devices or machines that you have out in your environment. So the old way you had to do it in CM07, pretty much you had to create collections for everything. If they're in the HR department and they have app XYZ version 3 and they have 50 gig free hard drive space, then, okay, now you go in this collection, and now you deserve this application on top. So you pretty much had to create a collection and granularize, that's not even a word, is it?
No.
To create the exact targeted audience you need. But with the new app model, you can eliminate most of that. Probably would still have to have a collection for HR machines, just so that you're targeting the same intended audience.
Or users, because we like to target users.
That's true, target users, HR users. But it would be the rules around the app that it had 50 gig free space, that they do currently have, or don't have at all, or whatever, application XYZ version 4, so therefore they should get XYZ application version 5. So one of the reasons for that is there is a joke that SMS used to stand for slow moving software, and part of that was because of the collection evaluation that had to take place. If you brought up a new machine in your environment, you'd have to wait for hardware inventory to go up, and then for collections to evaluate to see whether or not it would deserve some new application. So it might take a day before a particular machine showed like it deserved a particular application. But
the flip side of this is when the light bulb moment went off in your head, you said, I think I only need 2 collections anymore, all users and all systems.
Yeah, and
all devices.
And I thought that was great.
Let the app
and I
do the
kind of
rest of the
still want to
work.
do that, but I'm pretty sure they won't let me.
We'll refine that a little bit more.
But you can get pretty broad with your targeted audience and have all of the app rules do that. So state messages. State messages, what most people know them for is software updates. Do I deserve this update or not? Yes or no? But DCM has been in CM07, but it seems like people haven't really been using it that much.
Yeah, if you looked at my old server here, I didn't have anything set for it because we were going to get to it one day, but it was kind of like hard to figure out.
Oh.
I've been to some of your sessions on it. You make it look so easy, but I get lost.
Oops. Well, let me show you something, Brian. It's a lot easier. I understand that it was kind of hard before. You kind of had to know what you were looking for. You needed to know what you wanted. But one of the nice things about configuration items now is I'll just make something up, name of whatever. Doesn't matter. We'll create a new setting that we're looking for. What's nice is you can just browse now for most things. So if you're trying to check whether or not a particular registry key is a 0 or a 1, you can just browse for it now. Only I said it was supposed to be a string. There we go. So that's why it whined at me. So you can just type it in, click it, put it in there, and say that's what I need it to be.
That's kind of nice. And now we get a UI. We get Windows inside of CM.
Yeah, that's true.
All right, I'll start trying to use it more. In fact, I can see that can be so easy. I'm gonna use it all the time. I could probably replace some of my GPOs with that. Like I could, some of our security baselines I could just replace. I could have DCM check those kind of things.
That's true. There's security compliance monitor. There's a new SCM product that was released recently to help you.
It's been out for a long time, but they keep re-releasing it, making it better. I could just import that now because this is getting to be really simple, and I could make a baseline for my Windows 7 machines and enforce it every 15 minutes and keep ourselves real safe.
You did what?
I could set it to 15 minutes against every
15 minutes? Every 15 minutes.
Well, I want to play safe. 60 minutes?
All right.
90?
You're getting a little better. Just because you can do every 15 minutes doesn't mean you should. I know it's cool, but state messages, that is a lot of processing on the client, and then it's a lot of state messages that go up to your management point and then up into your server, just to say, yeah, I'm still okay. Yeah, I'm still okay.
What's the downside of that? State messages. Is there a downside?
No. I love state messages.
So then I can set it back to 15 minutes.
You can go right ahead and do that. But when you get that inbox backlog on state messages, then maybe you might want to think about increasing that from 50 every
But I
15.
didn't think we had inbox backlogs because we have CAS and SQL replication now.
Sure. Let's see how that works out for you.
Okay. Yeah, primaries still have inboxes, don't they?
Yeah, the primaries still have inboxes. It's still files coming from your clients that have to go up to the MP, that have to get imported into SQL somehow. So configuration items are usually what I think of as cheap yes and no answers. Keep it easy for the database to pull in that information. It's just a yes or no, 1 or a 0. But you know that hardware inventory does still have its place if you need to know what might be in a registry key, and it could be one of 1,000 things, then a configuration item might not be the correct answer for whatever it is you're trying to find. But if it's just a quick, is this registry key a 1 or a 0? And you know it has to be a 1. Or if, yeah, a file has to exist.
If I don't need to know what folder it's in or when it was created, just whether or not it's there.
Yep. So there are some instances where you could replace software inventory with the DCM.
And why would I do that? What's wrong with software inventory?
Just because on the client, it's kind of noisy on the client. I've never really cared for software inventory. I haven't for years, just because it's loud on the client. It takes a while. You know, the client has to do a lot of processing. If you ever watch that inventory agent.log when software inventory is running, it takes for flipping ever.
Okay. Yeah, we're not probably going to do that anymore.
Are you saying that I'm stupid?
No, you didn't call me stupid. We'll be nice. But we're using SRS now. There is no more ASP reports. So what we're going to do is let the boss just get this stuff himself.
But then how do I prove to him that I'm working?
Because the system's just up and running. And actually what you can even do is have the system email that for him. So in the console, you can, I'll give you a little. In the console, subscriptions is right under reports. You can right-click it, grab that report that your boss wants, and subscribe him to whatever he was looking for. Have it sent at 8 o'clock every day. This tells SRS to make that report available, to email it to him. All you have to do is set up your SMTP server, and this thing is done. And he's never going to have to go for it again. You can have it set so this will drop out a file-based report, or it'll just email him. It tells SRS what to do. You don't have to go into SRS to set it up. He doesn't have to go to SRS to set it up. And one last little bit is don't go into SRS to set any of this stuff up. The console now kind of controls SRS for like security and things like that. That report group that I made for you earlier, that role.
That read-only, yeah.
If you try to do that in SRS yourself, CM's going to come down and kind of like step on it, just like it does in WSUS. Don't try to set those things up there. Set them up in the console. It's controlling security and all these kind of reports now.
Okay. Packages, just as a general statement, you've heard a lot about applications this week, I'm sure. So packages are the old and busted way of doing things, right? I want to just have new applications, the new app model. Just cool. We just want to be cool in our new combined hierarchy.
Yeah, we do, and we're going to be. And so we'll be using apps as much as we can. Actually, I was at one point I was so convinced on apps that we weren't going to even do packages anymore. I have been convinced that there are a few times we will need some packages around. But mostly we're going to use apps, because apps gives us the ability to do those different kind of deployment types. We can do uninstalls. We can do pre-flights. There's all these kind of options that we don't get with old-fashioned packages.
Global conditions, do you want to do the other one, global? Yeah.
I don't really have any.
I don't really have. Well,
I didn't
anyway,
make any.
Global conditions are, it comes with a whole bunch of good ones that are built in, but when you're creating, if your admins seem to always be doing the exact same condition, where they have to make something up themselves, if you want, you can create your own global condition that your admins can pick from a list instead of having to recreate it every single time. So that is one of those little nuggets that's in the documentation, but perhaps it's not clearly visible the first couple times you're in the console. So if your admins are forever doing the exact same rule set, I guess would be a phrase to use, if it's something that you want to just make available to them from a pull-down list as a custom global condition.
These can be shared by everybody.
Yeah.
They show up for every, not just the...
Are you and me? Do you want yours? You and me.
Sure. This is what they look like. These are the ones that are built in. And we can add in any more that we need to. They can be shared by anybody on there. But these are a lot more powerful than, you know, your old packages gives us what the OS and, is that it? Space, drive space even?
Well, even with drive space, that doesn't prevent it. That's just a, by the way, recommendation, isn't it?
Yeah.
Oh no, wait, drive space does, yeah, it does limit.
There's countdown, there's time limit on how long
Yeah,
you can run,
anyway.
but there's hardly any of this kind of power.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, well, we'll try not to use a package unless we absolutely have to.
Pre-flight, simulated deployments. We love those. We do.
Yeah, I know that.
The reasons that you might really, really want to do a simulated deployment, I think they actually demoed that in one of the keynotes, so maybe this is just going to be a repeat now. But a simulated deployment, what's awesome about that is this new app deployment model is a new kind of way of looking at things. So before you would know, okay, my collection has 500 machines in it, that is who's going to attempt to install whatever it is I'm sending to it. Now you might have a collection of 500 machines, but only 100 machines are going to actually deserve that application to be installed. And you might want to do what's called a simulated deployment to make sure that your target of 500 machines, really only 100 will install it like you suspect if they were to attempt.
Yeah, because the old way, you're so used to making a collection, and you see that there's going to be 500, so you felt really good about, yep, that collection looks good, let me go ahead and send it. What if you made some little mistake, one last little change before you send this, and lo and behold, it went to 50,000 machines? You would,
Oops.
You know, oops, there's no way you're going to know, because that collection is just like to HR users. You didn't realize that you put a typo in there was a percent or something, and all of a sudden it went to all users. A simulated deployment will save you that heartache. It's worth that little extra effort to do one first.
Mm-hmm. And it's state message based, so it is really quick actually to get those messages back. I've tested it a couple times, and as soon as the client gets the policy, it's going to pretend to figure out whether or not it should try to install it. And as a state message, it comes right back. So depending upon your machine policy and user policy intervals, it's within a couple hours. So that whole like, oh, I can't wait a day to see whether or not this is going to work, I'm too busy, you can normally schedule your time so that you can get a couple hours of testing before you have to hit the trigger on something. You should still, of course, continue to pilot. You know, you probably don't want to just hit the trigger, but
no. But once you get off that pilot, you're going to go to the full one. Boy, I sure do a simulated deployment first this time because it is different.
So, Brian, in my little mini lab I set up in the back room, I put all those subnets in there, but it just doesn't seem to work right in my lab. Why is that?
Because we're not going to be using your old subnets anymore. We're going to use IP ranges. Theoretically, you could put in every single one of your known subnets in your console, and you can still have issues. And the reason why is because you may not know exactly what the mask is on the client, and if the mask isn't right, then you're going to get flaky issues. You know, the client may or may not work, depending on what you're trying to do. Mm-hmm. If we take a range, we're guaranteed it's going to work every single time. So what I do in my world is I just fill up. I make sure I've covered every single possible range on my primary sites, and by using that, there's no masking issues.
Okay, well, I just spent the last half an hour now, Brian, changing all my subnets over to ranges, but nothing's working yet. What did I do?
You got halfway done. We don't end there now. In CM12, just because you create a group doesn't mean you've done anything besides tell CM what possible or what kind of boundaries there are. You have to put those into boundary groups. Those can be assigned to each primary that you have. Then you'll get the results you want.
Okay, this is a slide of just kind of miscellaneous things that we've either heard from on the forums and different email lists, just general chatter. What some people have mentioned is you might want to, you've set up the option to install an app only for the primary user, and then you're testing and it just doesn't seem to work. You better remember to enable the primary user client agent settings so that you can use custom targeting of workstations. Want to take the next one? Oh, we already did that one.
Yeah, we did. Yeah, I've seen this one where people think that they only need one SUP in a hierarchy. If you're going to do that CAS thing, which we told you not to do, your CAS also needs a SUP. So, and you can't go the other way around. You can't just put one at your CAS and then not give your primary sites one. Everybody's going to need one for it to work. Now look how many boxes and all that extra work you've created. Just don't do the CAS.
Brian, I wanted to get Windows 7 out there right away, so I just targeted all systems. It worked great.
Sweet. Anybody looking for a new admin? You got to be very careful on that one. Those names are very similar in the console. All unknown computers next to all systems. Just be very careful when you flip that over. That's another good reason why maybe you want to get rid of, take yourself out of that full admin group so you don't even see all systems, and you won't look
but
for a
I
new
could
job.
still send Windows 7 to all servers. Still would work great.
If you don't want any servers in your environment anymore, yep.
Here's a couple other common things that we've heard of. When creating a boot image, you created it as network unattended, but you didn't bother to actually set up DHCP, so that's not going to work out too well for you. You forgot to add the internet name when you're using mobile device management. Your automated deployment rule looks right, but it doesn't actually work.
Yeah, remember I showed you that little disabled button. People think, all right, I'm going to be safe with my ADR. They make an ADR, and then they can't figure out why it's not working. You got to go back in there and enable it once you're happy with it. But again, I don't disable my ADRs. I set them to pilot collection automatically. But if you're really nervous about it and it's not working, go back and check it. See if you enabled it again or not.
If you've somehow missed an OSD presentation anywhere this week, this is another recommendation about don't import every drive that has ever existed in the history of computers into your boot images. Test and see which ones you actually need. Chris Nacker said that apparently for him, he usually needs only 3 or 4 in his boot images.
Yeah, we're getting a common theme here. It's just all those check boxes I like to check by default in software updates or in hardware inventory, or just importing every drive. Every time you do these shortcuts, they kind of come back to bite you. So just take the time and slow down. Mm-hmm. Now, we're ending kind of quick on this because on this session, what we want to do, we're going to have a big Q&A here because a lot of what we gave you, it just goes along with new thoughts about CM12. It's a brand new animal. We're so used to it that the concepts that we went over seem obvious to us, but they might not be to you. And so we think you're going to have a lot of questions on this one. So if you want to step up the mics and ask.
Just any kind of design thing or any setting, really.
Because something was unclear in the session.
Do we have any internet-based clients? We don't right now in our hierarchy. I don't know if does anybody have any internet-based clients in CM12 that they have any tips and tricks about how to get it working right? Or even in CM07? Tev.
So my name's Tev Sanders. I actually work for Microsoft Corporation and helped out a lot with different customers. A majority of customers I've seen are not going internet-based client management. You're using direct access or DA instead. So I really have seen people kind of ignore internet-based client management over the last 2 or 3 years and go for direct access. But that would mean that you would need to have Windows 7 clients. So the only customers I've seen really go after internet-based client management are the ones that are going to have XP clients around. But as you all know, XP clients are dying on April 2014. So make sure you get rid of that in your environment if you haven't already.
Okay, thanks, Tev.
In the package model, The older package model, if I installed an application and the application was installed but it broke later, I could use tools to rerun the advertisement on that machine so it would reinstall. But with the app model, where you're detecting a GUID or where it's detecting that the machine's installed, if you deploy an application with the app model and something gets, maybe an OCX gets unregistered or something on the machine, there's not, to me, I don't understand how you can force the machine to reinstall that, because the app model runs through the rules and says, oh, I already have this.
Okay, well then,
is there anything you can do about that?
I think what you'd have to do would be, you would have to perhaps figure out, okay, it's an OCX is uninstalled, make that part of the app model to test for that condition.
Right, but like for a big application like Office or something like that, there's not like, I mean, you wouldn't define all of these rules to figure out that it's installed correctly. Is there any way to override the app model detection to force it to believe that it's not installed, or is there?
Yeah, that's one way to be, uninstall it so that it is forced to realize it needs to reinstall. I would assume that you could, I'm sorry, I didn't hear that. Did you hear that?
I did.
Yeah, but I don't know what it means.
But you can maybe come up with a CI to make it look like it's not installed. Make a CI
I was thinking more that perhaps you would make it available as an optional advertisement. So even if it's already installed, a human in front of the console, in front of their workstation, could go into the software center, is that the right word for it, and choose to reinstall it.
So, even if I have it as an optional installation and I say yes, I want to run this installation, won't the app rules still reevaluate and say no, you don't need it? Do you think, or no?
I don't think I've tested that scenario, but then that argument of go ahead and uninstall it.
Yeah, right.
Otherwise, if it's in add remove programs, unless you've hidden the repair on purpose, you should be able to go into add remove programs and hit repair as well. Or remote repair options. I love doing, WMIC remote repair. It's fun.
I still wonder if you can make a CI to look for that bad DLL and then initiate that as a remediation
But like he's saying,
step.
he wouldn't want to do that. It's kind of a pain to do that.
I thought DCM was easy now.
It is easy now. He just doesn't want to do it.
Well, you're looking for a new job after sending Windows 7 all over.
All right, yeah. Maybe he'll hire me. It'll be great. Any other? I'm sorry, they're over there.
Okay, so there's lots of really good things in this new product. What I have not seen a lot this week is, oh crap, disaster recovery, backup, and offline. How do I bring it all back up? And that's probably a whole session in itself, but nobody's talking about it. It's like the big white elephant that nobody's talking about. So,
well, I guess because it really hasn't changed much, in my opinion. It's just still you use
So
the
there's-
SMS backup and you.
You still enable that as a task, and it's
right,
still,
but we still don't have load balancing or a way to offload it to another site in an emergency, in a disaster, or anything like that.
it's still not high availability. I mean, they've never made it so we can have two up at the same time. You can only have one config man primary alive at a time. You can do the offload SQL cluster, but that doesn't mean anything if your CM agent still dies over here, your SMS exec dies.
So
If
you
that
still
server
have to
dies,
rebuild your whole site and then recover it. Like,
just like we're doing in CM07. I mean, I don't think anything's changed in that respect.
No, I don't think anything's changed for high availability.
headed to a test, so I needed that.
Hey.
So you guys, I think you have a fairly large number of clients. I noticed when you were doing your ADRs, are you just blasting out all your patches at one time to all your machines?
Okay, well, what we have right now is for the endpoint protection, that is just go ahead. Just go ahead, enjoy it. You work, it's no big deal.
So what are the recommendations on scaling those out, normal patches out in phases?
Maintenance windows?
Maintenance windows to some degree, but ADR, I always start with an ADR where the collection that I've picked is my pilot collection. It'll create that deployment, and that deployment will be, to me, I set it so that it will be enabled by default. I see the results of my pilot, and then I can flip it from the pilot collection up to the next big collection, the next bigger one, and so on until I have like all systems, and then let maintenance windows kind of pick the timing for me.
So you still have manual work?
Because of our scale. I mean, I could see with a smaller company, you might do a pilot, and then on the Thursday after Hotfix Tuesday, if you didn't get woken up in the middle of the night because you've broken 80,000 machines, you could just flip it to the production collection. So yeah, there would still be.
It doesn't have to be manual work. I mean, if you
Yeah.
want to be crazy about it, you can say just let the ADR go to all systems.
This
Let
is
them
John.
You know,
Yeah.
if you want that is the equivalent of telling if you only had WSUS, and a lot of people just lazily say approve all.
Yeah,
You can
that
have
is
an
a good
ADR
point
do
because
that.
I'm so much in the CM world, I keep forgetting. What do you do? What do people do in WSUS? If you're moving from a WSUS base to a software updates in CM, what do you do in WSUS? I mean, I haven't been in that world in so long. Is anybody using WSUS right now? What is your plan right now for that? Do you have a pilot first?
Those
and
kind of
then
rules
go?
that you set in WSUS are pretty much what ADRs are all about now. It's just what people had WSUS were crying that we didn't have now. We have it now. When you say it's manual, yeah, it is manual. Then I'm going to have to flip from my pilot to my production. I personally want that as a time-in issue. Hey, everybody agree? Nobody had any issues? You're all sure? Because when we hit this big one, everybody else is going to get it. So I make that manual. But if you want to be crazy,
I'm gonna play a little bit
make
of
it
devil's
automatic.
advocate too. Everything's SDK will come out soon. I'm sure somebody who knows PowerShell might be able to figure it out. But it could be a script that you run that just adds your next collection.
Sure.
So you
And
could make it
schedule tasks.
semi-automated. Yeah. Why not?
I had a question about mobile device management. If you're going to set that up, does it need to be out in the DMZ, or can you do that from just internally and have Exchange, take care of the internet part of it?
Yeah, it is because all we get is the Active Sync plugin inside the console. All we're doing is telling CM who the Exchange server is, and that's it. The only other connection is by way of somebody else making their way to your Exchange server, and if that's through direct access or whatever.
However they can connect.
Yeah, however they're connecting.
their
It's not
Exchange.
a CM function that we're setting.
Okay,
Gotta
so
be
the
app-
config
app-
manager server doesn't need to be in any
No.
particular
No.
place.
Not
does
for,
it?
especially not for what they call the light management. I think they still have like a full client for like Windows Mobile from 3 years ago or something.
Yeah, and for whatever they showed on, what is it, the State of the Union, or for what's coming up.
Oh,
I
for
don't-
Intune?
Well, no, the new apps we're going to be able to push to iPhones and all that kind of stuff. I don't know where
that-
they
I thought
stand
that
with
was
any of that
Intune.
yet.
I'm sorry, but that was a bit of a confusing message.
We're
yesterday.
merging.
Oh,
Yeah,
I'm sorry.
thanks, guys.
Is there any other questions?
Yeah, back on server patching, we've talked about trying to minimize the number of collections in 2012 versus what we might have been doing in 2007. Right now, I've got a lot of different server collections for specifically maintenance windows and maybe suppressing a reboot versus allowing an automatic reboot. Is there anything you're doing different in 12 versus 7 in that regard, where you're like,
No.
is there something other than a collection that you're applying
Nope.
a maintenance window
No,
against now?
you still do have to create collections so that you can put a maintenance window on top of that, the members of that collection. So that has not changed.
You can still script it to have those things kind of created, but yeah, we're still stuck. We have like 250 different server collections for 250 different maintenance windows.
Oh well. But
Question, in CM07, when you reinstalled a machine, you get a new object in Config Manager. How is that in CM12? If you reinstall your client, do you get a new object, or does it use the old object?
did that improve? Do you know, Angie? Yeah. I think it does line up better, doesn't it?
I'm not sure what you're asking.
In
Is it-
CM07, it
if
only
you,
worked when you had...
New GUID.
Oh yeah, the old
Yeah.
ID to the new, sure. It retains it.
reuses? Okay, that's very fine. And another question, the global conditions you created, what you put on the screen, can you also use them in a task sequence?
Oh, I don't know. Task sequence. Global conditions. As in the global conditions are shared with the task sequence? I don't know if I've seen them in the GUI to choose, but I don't know if I ever looked either.
Same.
That would be great.
I don't know. Yeah. Yep. Yeah, so
okay.
if you're pointing to an app, and that app already is pointing to one of those global conditions, it will carry through and work. You know how I know that? Because Kent said so, and he knows everything. Anything else? Come and ask. The dumbest question you can ask right now. This is a good place to do it because back home you're going to be like, oh, I'll ask in a forum or something. Right now we got a lot of experts up here. You can get a lot of good answers.
One of the ideas that you showed was minimizing the number of patches that you turned on in the WSUS sync. But if you're managing servers and workstations, you're still turning on a lot of server patches that workstations don't need to look at. You're also turning on a lot of Windows 7 patches that XP clients don't need to look at. Is there any idea of having multiple WSUS lists so that the XP clients are only looking for their XP patches?
It is one size fits all. I mean, that's just a limitation of WSUS.
And honestly, state messages are pretty lean and mean. It's just, we were just trying to come up with an example of, don't turn on Exchange 2000 if you don't need it. Right. But yeah, it's not too bad, really, to have them checking for everything.
You can set in your ADR the option to set level of state messages, minimal versus normal. So a deployment that you want to use that you have to report compliance on, you don't want to set that to normal so you get all the state messages up. But let's say you have a bucket for catch-up patching, older patches, a year old or something.
Those would be minimum?
Yeah, 7 minimum.
Okay, so to repeat that for people in the back, Angie, the expert on software updates, it says that there's a place in there where in your ADR where you can set minimum or normal state message verbosity. Is that a good word? Of whether or not the client should report every piece of information about those particular updates, or if they should just do the minimal reply. So that's a really good tip. I didn't even know that existed. So thanks, Ange. No, the ADR, not the actual deployment. While he's putting that up, your next question?
Okay, yeah, actually just referring to earlier the question about the backup and recovery. So there have been a few improvements in backup and recovery, and you do just set the tasks to have a schedule to back up both your SQL database and your site with inboxes and things like that, and then you can restore from that if there's a disaster. But also, if you have a hierarchy, then even if you've never created a backup, there's a lot of things we can do that when you bring up a new site, it'll sync all the global data from the CAS, or if the CAS actually goes down, it'll sync from a designated primary site and get all of your global data back. And also, even a lot of the client data, they'll be able to resync some of those state messages from the client and recover virtually everything that you've lost. So there have been some improvements there.
Yeah, you know what? Even in our real world back home, we don't really back up our primary sites. They're just going to get most of their stuff right back down from the central anyway.
Yeah, it's the central we back up that we care about.
Yeah.
Under CMO7.
Yeah.
Okay, so I've had 12 for a couple months, and I really like the app catalog. But being a large company, have you guys found that it's too limiting? And if you don't mind, what are you using for self-service for users? Are you trying to use app catalog, still looking for third-party tools, or going?
We've had One Shopping for years, so that is our solution.
Gotcha.
So I hope that answers your question.
Yeah.
In that regards, I mean, if we didn't have it, we'd be playing around with Orchestrator. Kent here's got a cool way of how to do approvals now for shopping. It'll grow. It's going to get better over time.
Mm-hmm. Yes?
I inherited a CMO7 installation, and the basic assumption that they had for installing software, for software distribution, was that you interrupt the user as little as possible.
Yep.
Not talking about software updates, but just software distribution. And so we bend over backwards so that our software installations happen when the user is not logged on. So it waits until, they log off 60 seconds and it kicks in. But when I read other sites, other descriptions on the net and the documentation, that doesn't seem to be the assumption for other people or for the designers of Config Manager. What is the default? I mean, each company has their own way of doing things, I know that, but what is the default set of assumptions for software distribution as far as the degree to which it's going to interrupt the user or interact with the user?
I think just from what I read in the forums and stuff it is more of like what your industry standard is or what your expectations are from your users. One of the things, I guess, that has been a theme the last few years coming to MMS is, despite the fact that we are technicians and we think that the end user doesn't want to be interrupted, they just want to get their job done, they are getting a lot smarter. They all have computers at home, they all have devices, they all have everything in their back pocket. They want to know what's going on. They would actually much rather know and see a pop-up. They would much rather go and get the software that says there's a deadline in a week and you need to have this in a week. They'd much rather see that pop-up and go get it.
That being said, I mean, we still have teller machines. We don't want our tellers going out shopping or installing apps like that. This is, a lockdown machine, and we are going to send stuff out like that silently. They're not going to see it. We'll actually do it after hours, and they'll never even know something happened. Kiosks, there's a whole bunch of situations where you want something to go silently. So that hasn't been taken out of the product. It's just they're making it a lot easier to be polite to users who do want to be bugged or asked.
But yeah, from a philosophy standpoint, it's up to you. It's up to you, but user-centric philosophy is, I guess, around the point where pop-ups are okay. People expect to see them because they have computers at home now.
So I guess
we're running out of time. If there's one more other questions.
I have one last question. Is extending the MOF the same in 12 as it was in 07?
The SMS def MOF?
And configuration.mof?
Configuration.mof is still there. SMS def MOF is not there anymore. But you can export the settings to just whatever file you want to see. Just if you're, as a human, you want to look at them. Let me just get into client settings here.
And if you extend them, do they show up in that harbor inventory list?
Oh yeah.
Yes, they do.
Oh yeah, that's easy. There's a couple of self-paced labs under MVP labs that I wrote for basically using regkey to MOF with CM12 and doing a custom WMI edit with CM12. But otherwise, yeah, if you go into hardware inventory, set classes, this is literally the SMS def MOF here, but I'm still a human. I still like to look at stuff in Notepad, so I will literally go export and dump it into a text file and look at it just the way it used to look in SMS def MOF with the true and the false and everything, because I'm just old. That's how I look at it.
Wally would be proud.
Yeah, Wally.
All right. We've got to finish up, but tonight we're taking questions later on, I think.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, if you have any questions we didn't cover, one of us will be at the speaker thing at 5:30. Otherwise, just come up to the podium.
All right. Thanks for coming.
Yep.